know relatively little about, other than the few things we hear in our first reading. In fact, what we hear are the key things that qualify him for the task that he will undertake. That is the task of being an apostle. He is someone who has been a follower of Jesus since the beginning of his public ministry, from when the first people were baptized, and he continues that right up until the ascension. He can therefore act as a witness to the events of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. And this is key to being an apostle, being an eyewitness to the events of Jesus' life, and most especially someone who can say that he had seen the risen Lord. And because of what he had seen, he is someone who can then be sent out to make known to others what he had witnessed. And so Matthias fits that role. But in the background to the account of the calling of Matthias is the betrayal of Judas. Peter is keen to replace the man who has fallen away. And there's clearly a need to do this because the 12, amongst other things, represent the 12 tribes of Israel. And so they need to retain this structure and symbolism despite the betrayal. And we might add that it's very important that the betrayal is healed by choosing someone who will be faithful and persevere until the end. And there are several different accounts in early Christian writings of Matthias' ministry and death, yet all of them point to his fidelity to the end, even to the point of shedding his blood. This theme of the undoing of sin and betrayal in the history of the church is a very important one. We see it happen in that same person, the person of St. Peter, with his denial, later undone by his profession of love for Jesus and by his faithfully carrying out the mission to feed Christ's flock. And Judas' betrayal, his unworthiness of his call, is now followed by the call of a man who is able to show himself to be worthy by the grace of God. The lesson for us then in our own personal lives is to make sure that when we sin, when we fail, we humbly seek forgiveness from God and make it our firm resolve to strive by grace to be faithful where in the past we have been unfaithful. We should also remember that the lesson of Matthias has relevance for the whole church too. We see clearly that the church has had people capable of betrayal, a lack of faithfulness in her midst from the very beginning. And we know that this continues to be the case to this day. And so part of our task in the face of this sometimes very painful reality is to make sure that we make reparation for the damage that others have caused through sin by striving all the more to be faithful in our own lives. And of course, by keeping a healthy sense of our own sinfulness, our own unworthiness, and need for God's mercy, so that we can avoid being complacent about our own ability to fall away.